and some really spectacular light starting to happen right out on the lake at the moment. G'day everyone, welcome to this week's video. One of the advantages of living close to the lake nearby is I'm able to shoot it in all different conditions. Everything from astro, sunrise, sunset, and even storms. Recent rainfall had caused some minor flooding around the lake, and we've got some predictions this afternoon for some high cloud. So I'm going to go out and look for a unique composition utilising some of the flooded foreshores, and if successful, come back here and do an edit and show you how I edit some of my images. The challenge will be to plan, scout, compose, shoot and edit this final image. Come down to the lake this afternoon looking for new compositions and a little bit of flooding down around the lake, so this might be good for a sunset shoot. I've just found this tree right on the foreshore here, and because the lake's flooded we've got a really nice reflection in the foreground here, so this is going to be my composition for tonight. I'm going to get my gear set up. A little bit of dark cloud on the horizon unfortunately, but we'll just wait and see what we can get. I'll get the camera out, take a couple of handheld shots, and then maybe grab the tripod a little bit. Not long before sunset now, and I've actually broken out the tripod and I've picked out a frame here with the actual reflection of this tree, and being shrouded in by the rest of these trees that surround it. Really beautiful evening here. We're just starting to get a little bit of pink colour on the horizon, so I've got my fingers crossed that we might actually get some colour. But yeah, really happy with this composition, and just a great afternoon to be down by the lake. As I said before, there's a little bit of flooding around the lake this afternoon, and it's creating some really nice effects around the lake where the water's backing up. Just got some nice pink hues out on the horizon. Now I'm going to keep shooting and then I'll come back and have a chat. Nearly dark here now. We're down to 1 second at f9, and we've got some really nice colour just starting to appear in those higher clouds, and I've picked out a composition here using the tripod. I'm in a vertical orientation. I've got the tree right through the middle of my composition, and then I've got this beautiful framing right around the tree. This shot looks really nice, and some really spectacular light starting to happen right out on the lake at the moment, and turning out to be a great sunset here tonight at Long Jetty. And clouds really kick it off here now. Got some beautiful reflections right in this pool right in front of me, and just an absolutely awesome sky. It turned out to be an awesome evening here, trying to capture some images around the lake. The light's just about gone. I'm going to go back and do a little bit of editing on this image, so I'll see you shortly. Welcome back everyone. I'm just going to do some editing now. I'll just qualify by saying I'm not one of the greatest editors. If you do want to see someone who is really good at editing landscape images, then I'll definitely refer you to William Patino's channel. Check out some of his photo editing videos. But yeah, we're just here in Adobe Camera Raw. I use Adobe Camera Raw. It's very similar to Lightroom. Not a lot of difference. Most of the settings are exactly the same. I'll be editing today in Adobe Camera Raw. This image here is one of the first images that I looked at and made the final cut, but when I looked at it I didn't really like the balance in it. To me, on the left hand side of the frame it wasn't as balanced as it was on the right, and I didn't really like a lot of this grass in the foreground, and it could have cleaned it up perhaps, but I decided to ditch this image. The next image I went with was another image of it, the singularly of the tree. It's this one here. I did like this image, but what I found with it when I was looking at it was that it didn't seem to have enough interest around the image. Although it's a little bit dark at the moment, I just wanted to have some more balance in the image as well. We seem to have all the light on one side and not on the other side, and I would have preferred to get some light on both sides of the image. So this was the final image I chose from the night, and as you can see there, it's quite balanced. We've got the natural framing of the trees around the tree reflection in the middle. We've got some nice reflections in the pool in the foreground, and a beautiful reflective sky. So what I would normally do with any of my images is, as I said, I'm doing them in Adobe Camera Raw, and what I typically would do with an image like this one, when I look at it, is I would come down and I would actually just change it to Adobe Landscape. Changing that color profile, you can see straight away there. By changing it to Adobe Landscape straight away, it puts in that bit more punch of vibrance and color. I don't have to touch the vibrance and color at all. What I would do then is I normally would come down and looking at my histogram here, I'm just going to raise up my exposure. I'm going to push the exposure as far as I can until I just see that starting to clip up here in this highlight. And I'm just going to pull that back so it's just not clipping the sky. And then I would just balance the image out by just pulling back the highlights in it. We're doing global adjustments at the moment, so everything I'm doing is affecting the entire image. And you can see there now that we've got quite a balanced exposure. The histogram looks a lot happier. We've raised up and made that little bit lighter. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to get this foreground and try and balance it out with the sky somewhat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a mask, and I'll come down here to linear gradient. So I'm going to grab a linear gradient, and I'm just going to take that from the bottom and raise that up, and I'm just going to put that on the bottom of the image, and we're just going to lift the exposure just ever so slightly so the sky and the foreground looks a little bit more balanced. They don't have to be perfect, but slightly more balanced. I'll just raise the shadows somewhat as well. Next, I'd come down here to optics, and I'd make sure I tick remove chromatic aberration and also use the profile corrections. You can see now that it's brightened the image up somewhat, and it looks much nicer, much more balanced, and much more even exposure. What I would do from here is I'd take the image out and just have a bit of a look at it. I'm quite happy with the image at the moment. What I'd like to do though is darken down this top area up here. So what I'll do is I'll actually just press K on the keyboard, grab a brush, and I'll come across to my brush tool, and looking at my brush tool, I've got my feather, my flow, and my density on 100. I'll just open the brush up ever so slightly, and I'm just going to pull down the exposure and the highlights. And I just want to darken the top of this image here. It's just subtle, really subtle all the way around with this. The image has got enough color, it's got enough light in it. I don't really need to do much more with that. So I'm just going to do some subtle editing around the edges just to try and draw the viewer's eye into the shot. So you can see that just that little bit of darkening up the top there, it's ever so slight, but it just brings some of that detail back in the sky. I'm going to press K again, and I'm actually going to go a little bit further this time. I'm going to pull the exposure down just a little bit more, and I'm actually going to pull the highlights down as well. And I'm just going to darken the foreground somewhat, just so that we're creating a window or a view through to this main focal point I want, which is the actual reflection in the tree. From here, I'm going to grab another mask, only this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a radial gradient, and with the radial gradient I'm just going to put that over the center of those two trees. And what I'll do is I'll just create an oval shape out of the radial gradient, just make it just a touch bigger, and I'm just going to circle it around so it just covers both those trees. Perhaps go a little bit larger there as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise the exposure ever so slightly. These are all just subtle movements, not big movements on the sliders. Just raising the shadows about +5. What that does is just creates that little bit more light through the image. The next thing I want to do from here is I want to be able to try and create some depth in the image. So what I'll do from here is I'll actually bring it back up to full size. If you look at my horizon line, there's quite a bit of contrast out there. So one way to be able to bring a little bit more depth back into the image is press K again. And what I'll do from here is I'll actually come down to the clarity and to the dehaze, and I'm going to actually rehaze the horizon, and I'm going to pull back the clarity on the horizon so it looks a little bit more natural and how we would see it with the naked eye. Taking a little bit of that clarity and putting that little bit of rehaze. If I turn that brush on and off, you'll see that subtle difference it makes in that horizon and just creates that nice depth in the image. From here, there's not a lot more I would do this image. Perhaps what I would do is I might come across to Photoshop. I might take some of this foreground grass out and out of here. But that's about it. Due to shooting an even exposure, there wasn't a lot of heavy editing required. That's what it looks like before, and that's what it looks like after editing. It just goes to show you don't have to be too heavy-handed with the editing to be able to extract the information out of the file. Let's go and have a look at the final shot. Well guys, that completes this week's video. If you've enjoyed this content where I'm actually photographing and editing, then let me know in the comments down below, and I'll certainly look at doing more of these type of videos in the future. If you've enjoyed the content to this video, then go down below, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe, tap that notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload my next video. If you've got a comment or a question, leave them below, I'll always respond. Hopefully I'll be around shooting some more landscapes soon. I'll see you then.